Welcome to Universal Man. How are y'all doing? So today we are back with the Universal Man podcast number 2. Nope, number 3. There's been a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff on my mind, a lot of stuff to get to today. It's been wild, actually. We're more than halfway through No Nut November. Like, my initial plan was to have ourselves do kind of like a big halfway point check-in. But then all this other stuff happened. So, like, we launched Vanguard 2.0, which went fantastically. We got a huge number of guys who signed up for the new Vanguard, which is fantastic. You guys can actually, check it out right now if you want to go to the website. Just go to universalman.com, check out the membership, and you can, take a peek at it. But that went really good. That was a lot of stuff that happened with that. But then, kind of like in the middle of it, James, who normally would host these with me, he quit. He's got some personal stuff going on, and James was kind of like my core right-hand man assistant. And so that was like an instantaneous 40 extra hours of work thrown onto my plate each week. So in the middle of all the launch, he left, and we were still adding people to the Discord manually. So there is even more support than normal. Luckily, we're getting that kind of automated and whatnot now. But that was crazy. And then on top of all of that, there was stuff breaking on the new website, which I had to get fixed, work with the web developer. And it all actually was pretty interesting. I'm kind of grateful for it because it's been a while since I've been really taxed like that. And I've been, it's always nice if you're kind of a productivity expert or whatnot to sometimes put your systems to the test. And it's, since if you have a good productivity system, you're kind of designed to not tax yourself, right? But it's good to stress test the system. And I can say that it really worked out super well. So I'm excited to put all of that, what I do, how to manage all that kind of stuff, into some kind of content for you guys here soon. But today we've got all kinds of stuff we're going to be covering. So we're going to talk about, I figured it'd be a good time to talk about how I deal with anxiety when I experience it, because I definitely experienced some of that here recently. I want to talk about men in dresses. That's a hot thing in the news right now. I'm a little late on this one, but I want to talk about Jeffrey Toobin. I'm sure you guys have heard about him. Just want to give a quick take on him. And then I figured, keeping in the spirit of No Nut November, many of our brothers have fallen in battle, I'm sure, at this point. Hopefully none of the guys who have been following me here, but I'm sure many people out there have. And I want to maybe offer an upgrade to your perspective on this stuff and talk about simp tiers, different tiers of symptom and what that means. And if you maybe have that in your brain, it might make it easier for you to develop some sexual self-mastery. And then finally, since it's, it depends on what side of the aisle you're on, but things are still crazy politically. And so I had a couple of thoughts I wanted to share on that. So this might be a relatively thick show. We'll see how long it takes to get through it all. I don't know. Kind of still feeling out this live thing, but I'm enjoying it. Seems like everybody's in here and things going smoothly so far. Let me make sure. Stream's looking good. All right. So let's go ahead and get into our first topic here, all right? And I want to talk about how I deal with anxiety. So when you've got anxiety, if it just kind of mounts and mounts and mounts, it's very difficult to get yourself to do anything, right? Sometimes it's ironic. For most of us, the more stressed we get, the less we can actually accomplish, right? And it should ideally work in the opposite direction. We should actually become stronger the more stressed we are and be able to accomplish more. You would think that, it would give us energy and whatnot. And for some people who have some, self-discipline and whatnot, they can do that. But for a lot of guys, I think it goes the opposite direction. As soon as they get more stressed, they just want to escape more and more. And I get that impulse. That's exactly who I was for the vast majority of my life. And it sucks being that way because life's never going to be completely stress-free. And when things really, shit really hits the fan, like, your assistant, leaves you in the middle of a big launch, like, it's like, whoa, no. And if I shut down there, well, lots of bad stuff would have happened. So how do I handle anxiety? This is a system that works. It's pretty simple, but it works super, super well. All right. First thing you got to understand is what anxiety is. Anxiety is like an alarm bell. It's like your emotional mind saying, hey, there's something wrong here. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. It's just like ringing the alarm. And with that, it also sends you a big jolt of energy. And for many people, this is kind of jarring and overwhelming. It's like the cortisol and adrenaline and whatnot flooding your system. If you're not ready for it, you don't know how to handle it, it just can make you like lock up and want to run away, because that's kind of part of the physiological response. Is one mechanism, especially if you don't know how to deal with the stress, is it triggers the flight mechanism, right? And so ultimately what we're trying to do is trigger the fight mechanism. We want to be able to use stress to cause us to engage on a deeper level. And in order to do that, you got to get some awareness, okay? You can't just let the stress float freely in the emotional realm, undefined and in this abstract manner, because you can't deal with emotional abstracts. You can't even argue with them, okay? So the very first thing that I do when I'm stressed is I first relax, actually. Yeah, before I get into this next piece, I relax. Physically, you got to relax. You got to ground yourself, take some deep breaths, relax your musculature, okay? Because when you've got these alarm bells ringing, what kicks in is all these sort of unconscious autopilot patterns, whatever you've kind of trained yourself to do in the face of anxiety. And these patterns are like puppet strings. They're these little strands of tension that just lock into your system. And if you don't take control, then you just start acting on autopilot. It's like the puppet strings fully control you and, cause you to do whatever it is that's probably unhelpful. So by physically, consciously relaxing, you're cutting those strands of tension and you are exerting executive control over your system. And you're also turning the energy down a lot so that you have a lot more control. So that's the very first thing. Then what I like to do is I like to make a list. I make a list where I put words to all of the things that I'm worried about. And so in this instance with James leaving, what I did was I just wrote down all the things I was worried about. So I was like, I have to do this now. I have to do this now. I have to check on this thing. This thing is breaking. This thing is messed up. Like, listed everything out, okay? And sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll realize, oh, wow, there's actually nothing really wrong. It's just like you list it and it's like, oh, why am I so freaked out? That's not a big deal. And sometimes that's all you need to do is list it, see what you're freaking out about, realize it's not a big deal, and then boom, you're done. But sometimes, you find all kinds of different stuff. Sometimes you find, like in my instance here, it was mostly just a lot of practical issues, like how was I going to manage all the responsibilities and support and that sort of thing by myself. But sometimes it's emotional stuff. Sometimes it's like, deep-seated fears or worries or insecurities or things like that, right? And so you list all that stuff out. And ultimately, what you have to do is you have to respond to these things. You have to take these little messages from your emotional mind that say, hey, this is not okay. This is not okay because X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. And you have to be able to respond and be like, no, it is okay. And here's why it's okay. So in my case, it was like going through each of the things, be like, hey, this is okay because I'll get to it at this time. Hey, this is okay because you know what? I can solve this problem in this way. And just like go through, you solve it, and it feels pretty good, right? For the deeper emotional stuff, that can be a little bit trickier. That's where you got to maybe affirm yourself. If you're dealing with insecurity and stuff like that, check out my Enter the Omni Game series where I talk about, how to tap into a more radiant versus a vacuous mindset, which is absolutely essential. So, usually if you have some kind of emotional insecurity, it's the result of you determining your worth based upon someone else's perception or some kind of external status measurement. And that can really mess you up. So, you got to respond to that kind of stuff too. But the big thing that gets in the way of responding to whatever it is that you just took inventory of is what I would kind of define as toxic thoughts. So a toxic thought is something that it serves no beneficial purpose and all it does is make you feel worse. So one toxic thought would be to just bitch and moan, basically, just to complain. So if I just sat there and indulged thoughts of, oh, I can't believe you left, or oh, I can't believe I have to do all this, oh, this is so unfair, that does absolutely nothing. All that does is increase the negative emotions that I'm feeling and makes any sort of productive action more difficult. Another toxic thought that a lot of people engage in is they will just ruminate on worst case scenarios. So they will think about, this went bad, and what if it keeps going bad? What if things never get better? What if, things crash and burn? So like if I was prone to that kind of thing, I would maybe think, oh, well, what if I can never find a replacement? Or what if I'm stuck doing this, all this work by myself for months? Or, what if, sales just completely plummet, or the website completely breaks, or something along those lines. Like if I let my mind go there, I could have really freaked myself out. This is what a lot of people do, is they will essentially engage in what I would call counter manifestation. They give all their energy to the worst possible outcomes, and often they end up acting in a way that then makes that the case, which, is not helpful, and you obviously want to avoid. So the big thing here is make sure that you keep your thoughts helpful. All right, you gotta find out what it is that you can do to help your current situation. Lay it all out, respond to each thing, and sometimes you got to go through this multiple times, because if the waves keep coming up or you get new things that you're freaked out about, write it down, respond to it. Write it down, respond to it. You can talk it out with someone too if you want to rely on someone, but for me, I like to, at the best of my ability, manage things on my own. But I've got a lot of experience, so don't worry about that if you can't do that. If you need some help, that's totally fine. So that's kind of my general strategy for dealing with stress and anxiety. Hopefully you guys enjoy that, and if you got any follow-ups on that kind of stuff, let me know. Someone said my video on psychofusion and fission is awesome. Yeah, that's kind of like that mentality. So that's the last one of the Enter the Omni Game series. That one is kind of like the big daddy when it comes to the inner work stuff. So if you can get that down, then you're going to be doing pretty good. So, all right, we're going to move on to the next thing, talking about anxiety, because some people are losing their shit over this stuff here. So let's look at this. Harry Styles was, I guess, taking some pictures of himself in a dress. Let's see if we can bring this up here. All right. So what did he say? He's saying, "There's so much joy to be had in playing with clothes. I've never thought too much about what it means. It just becomes this extended part of creating something." And Harry Styles, what's he from again? I don't know. He's from some kind of, I think, a boy band. Is that what it is? I can't remember the name of the boy band. I think he is. But now he's a solo artist, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I think he's a musician. I think he's some kind of was a teen heartthrob. Now he's doing his own thing and taking pictures of himself in dresses. Okay. Now, this alone didn't cause much controversy. What caused controversy was when people started responding to it. In particular, everybody's favorite, Candace Owens. And she said, "There is no society that can survive without strong men. The East knows this. In the West, the steady feminization of our men at the same time that Marxism is being taught to our children is not coincidence. It is an outright attack. Bring back manly men." And then Ben Shapiro hops on this too, and he says, "This is perfectly obvious. Anyone who pretends that it is not a referendum on masculinity for men to don doofy dresses is treating you as a full-on idiot. Masculinity and femininity exist. Outward indicators of masculinity and femininity in nearly every human culture. Boys are taught to be more masculine in virtually every human culture because the role of men is not always the same as the role of women." And then, he goes on and whatever, makes it a big political thing and whatnot. And this caused all kinds of controversy and backlash and people freaking out at them for them freaking out at Harry Styles. And I figured it's kind of important to walk through this because there is a little bit of nuance that I think is being missed here. Okay. men in dresses can show up in a few different contexts. All right. One is the context of actual feminization, like cross-dressing, in the case of like a trans person, drag queen, like basically a man who is a man trying to physically become more feminine. Okay. That does happen. Obviously, that's one kind of thing. And if that was what was going on, like it was trying to tell like guys to be less manly or whatever, maybe Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro could have some sort of point with what they're saying. I would say that there is, I would agree with them that there is like more traditional masculinity is not looked favorably upon in the Western world at the moment, especially in mainstream society. It's definitely, being a manly man is mocked by primarily mainstream left culture, right? You look at a lot of the sitcoms and stuff in the past 20 years or something, all the dads are doofuses. Think like Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, all these kinds of people. It's just like big, like doofus dad, he's an idiot. It's just like there is an absolute point to all of this. But that's not what's going on here, I don't think. I don't really know Harry Styles or anything about his sexuality, but I do know that he's considered kind of like a heartthrob sort of character. And this is where we get into kind of these other sorts of contexts where a man might wear a dress. Okay, so beyond just actual feminization, we've got comedic stuff, like that's an old comedy trope, like put a guy in a dress. It's like, that's old, and I guess some people think it's funny. But the context that's going on here, from my understanding, is like a masculine power play. So like you think about the people who've done this sort of thing in the past, like Prince or who are the other people that have done this? David Bowie. There's plenty of artists. I guess even Nirvana did it at certain points. They would wear dresses. And a lot of like rock stars, especially like, 60s, 70s, 80s, the glam, like super, feminine sort of styling and whatnot, but like of these essentially masculine sex symbols. Like what's going on there is that it's kind of like it's a power play. One of the key elements of a masculinity is the display of confidence. So what's more confident than essentially like wearing a dress? It's like, I'm so confident in my masculinity that I can put a dress on. All right. And it's women actually can be attracted to this kind of thing because of the confidence, not because of the dress, at least in general. I'm going to make a generalization about that. I'm saying most like heterosexual women, if they are attracted to a man who is, doing a masculine power play like this by like showing he's so confident in himself and his sexuality that he's able to play around with this kind of stuff. Like that's what's going on. She's just attracted to how much swagger he has, that he can just pull it off and not give a shit. Right. And that is what I'm seeing here. And this like I haven't dug too much into this story, but I haven't seen anyone really talk about this. And like I think that this is kind of like, I don't know, it's obvious to me, but I've been in this sphere for a while now. So that's the thing you want to look at here. Like if you're like the peak pinnacle, I think, of being a man is that you do whatever, like you do what you want to do and no one can tell you otherwise. Like you do what you believe is truly best and you don't give a shit. You're going to do it. That's kind of what it's about, is like you are completely subservient only to your higher moral will and your creative impulse, and everything else is secondary. And women like to see that because they know that if like, you can't be controlled by culture or, other people's opinions or that sort of thing, then basically you're a safe guy to be around. You're probably going to be successful. You're probably, going to be able to make your way in the world, and you're going to be someone who they'd like to be around in general. So that's what I think is going on here. And I think that everyone else is missing the point. And I think people need to get smarter, personally. So that's that. Let's see what people are saying. Why are you all scared of a dress on one man? Mark, no. Man with a beard says, Mark, no, this isn't confidence. That seems like confidence to me. I mean, it's also marketing. It's all kinds of stuff like that. You know, if you're willing to play the game and your dignity is not offended by it and you get a lot of attention and whatnot, then he's playing the game and he's winning. And everyone who's freaking out about it, everyone who's like, you know, getting their panties in a bunch about it, you're just making them stronger. You're just making it more likely that people are going to do this. If you just look at it and be like, oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, boring. That's what takes power away from it. That's what I think. So, okay, let's move on to our buddy, Jeffrey Toobin. Did you all hear about this? I assume that most of you heard about this. So, the Tubester here, he worked for The New Yorker and CNN as like a reporter and analyst. I think he's done some books and stuff like that. Recently, he was, due to all this, I think, let go from both of these places. He, my friends, he did the unthinkable. He jerked off on a Zoom call, and not just any Zoom call. It was a meeting with a whole bunch of high-profile people at The New Yorker. I think they were running like an election simulation, and apparently he thought he turned the video off and just started going to town on himself. And I feel real bad for the Tubester because clearly this was massively humiliating, financially probably devastating for him. And also, you know, he likely has an issue if he's doing stuff like that. If like in the middle of a work call you're supposed to be participating in, you're cranking out some knuckle babies, like that doesn't strike me as healthy. That doesn't strike me as a man who's really happy with his sexuality and his life. And obviously I know that pain. I know that, not that specific pain of being caught in that way, but like, you know, obviously like I had this history of being a porn addict. I'm in this sphere of trying to help guys break free from, you know, pornography and that sort of thing. So, you know, he's kind of like someone I'd really want to help. But this whole thing is very, very unfortunate for a number of reasons. And I would say probably, like, I'm going to make a prediction here that this is not the last time we're going to hear a story like this, especially as we move to probably more remote work in general. I think that these kinds of mistakes are going to become more and more common because, like, dudes, I think porn addiction has gone through the roof due to the coronavirus lockdown. You know, like just due to the sales and the demand that I see for my Reforged Man course, which is all about developing sexual self-mastery, quitting porn, and that sort of thing. And just like the interest in like my videos around that kind of stuff. It's clear that this is an increasingly bigger and bigger issue. And so like, it's just with the sheer number of calls and stuff going on, like this is going to happen. It's going to keep happening. And what's probably most unfortunate about it for Jeffrey is that he's got like a real good name to just be like stuck on this thing. So it's like pulling a Toobin, you know, tubing out, you know, tubing his tube. Like it's going to stick, I think. And I feel bad for him for that. But this is the thing, guys. It's like you gotta, if you really want to be like not have to worry about this kind of stuff, you just got to get the man that you are in private in alignment with your actual public-facing morals and values. I recently sent out an email to my list. Like, if you're not getting my daily emails, make sure you do. Make sure you sign up for one of my guides in the description below, and you can get on my daily email list. But I recently sent out one where I got a message. It was like all in Korean, and I translated it, and it was like a scammer, like a hacker or whatever, saying that he had that he had gotten like video of me. He like hacked my computer, and he had gotten video of me, like hacked my webcam, got video of me watching porn and jerking off. And I thought it was hilarious because I don't watch porn and I also don't jerk off. So, you know, obviously that was, you know, hilarious to me, and I shared that. But it got me thinking, like, well, what if that wasn't my case? What if I was using porn? What if I was jerking off and I got that kind of message? At the very least, I would do an extremely fevered Google search to see if that was possible and be like, what's the likelihood of this happening? Oh, can this really be going on? How do you handle a situation like this? And I imagine that plenty of guys fold under this, especially if they've got some kind of higher profile setup, or maybe they're just, a public facing figure, or they just don't want people to find out. They don't want to see them, don't want people to see them beating their meat, because it's that's what they do. They threaten to post it on social media and all this kind of stuff if you don't pay them in Bitcoin. So you gotta get yourself under control, my friends. Okay. I know many of you have struggled during No Nut November. Put a F in the chat for all our fallen No Nut November friends. Let me know if you're still going strong. I want to hear it. Because this is a weird time that we're heading into, and the best way that you can protect yourself is just get your sexuality under control. It's a lot better life for yourself from a lot of problems, and you're going to be way better off. So, with that being said, it's time to look at what I came up with as the tiers of symptom. All right. So there are many videos made recently about this idea of being a simp. Okay, and I haven't really put my take on it yet, and I figure it's useful, especially since we're getting toward the end of No Nut November, and for those of you who are losing hope or losing steam, maybe this perspective will reignite you a little bit. Okay, because I think one of the big things that happens when you use porn and stuff a ton is that you become like a fish in water. It just becomes something that it's such a part of your environment, such a part of who you are, how you show up, how you think, that you can't even see it for what it is. So we gotta step outside of this and see, what exactly are we doing, and is this the person that we want to be? Okay, so let's talk about a tier 1 simp. Okay, I'll call this a soft simp, or soft simping. Okay. And this is a situation where a woman, we're going to keep it heterosexual. You can do whatever sort of adjustments you need to for different configurations of sexuality, but we're going to talk about it in heterosexual terms. Okay. It would be a woman showing off her, assets, her TNA, trying to dress provocatively, behave provocatively, and get some attention for it. Okay. Soft simp, tier 1 simp, what he does is he gives her the attention that she wants, okay? And what the guy gets is he gets a little boost of, sexual stimulation, all right? So this is something where it's just as simple as a provocatively dressed woman walks down the street and you're just oh, and you just ogle her and you're oh, and you just can't stop thinking about her for a little bit. It could be you just scrolling through Instagram, looking at butt cheeks, that kind of stuff. Like Instagram is soft simp heaven. It's just women wanting attention for their bodies and men being happy to give them attention for their body. And, I would say most guys engage on this. It's almost like a reflex until you train yourself to be a soft simp a little bit. Okay. Now, on its own, it's not good. You're kind of, taking some power away from yourself. You're letting women take control over you. You are maybe not being able to fully honor your dignity. And you also get easily distracted and maybe even manipulated. Okay. If there's pretty girls can get their way if you're a soft simp. They can kind of wrap you around their finger and, you'll give them more leeway and whatnot than maybe you would to someone else. And, it usually doesn't work to your benefit. But things get even worse when we go up to simp level 2. And I would call this the sticky simp. All right. And this is when you actually start jerking off. Okay. This is when you actually start, watching porn and doing that sort of thing. Okay. And this is where things get truly undignified, I would say. In the case of porn use, what's going on there? Let's put this in evolutionary terms. It's like the hunter-gatherer equivalent of watching the alpha of your little tribe who's bigger, stronger than you, like bang the chick that you want, that you're attracted to, and you just kind of like jerking off in the bushes while you watch. Okay, like it's like the saddest thing. But you don't think about it like that when you've been doing it since you're 12 years old. It's just kind of like brushing your teeth. It's just, oh, this is what I do. But like when you step back and look at it, it's like, oh, do I want to be that guy? I would argue that most of you probably don't. I know I certainly don't. Right? It's the same thing with fantasy. Essentially, it's like you're giving your life force to something that has no use. You're literally just creating a virtual world in your brain where you're stealing some like woman's image and you're using it to pleasure yourself. Okay, it's just weak. It just gives so much of your power and your psychology over to something that serves no purpose other than to deepen the power of women over you. That's what happens, is you just become more and more enslaved to the opposite sex, or even just the idea of the opposite sex. And it's just not a useful or fruitful act in any way, and it just drains you. It can build addiction. It can do all this kind of stuff. But things get probably, the worst once you get up to simp level 3, okay? And this is where you start doing hard simping. So we got soft simping at first, then we got the sticky simp, and now we got the hard simp, okay? The hard simp is when you actually start like investing in the relationship, but like in the wrong way. It's like you put the pussy on such a high pedestal that you start charging yourself admission, all right? It's like OnlyFans. That's hard simping. It's like, I'm going to pay you for your pictures, or, a premium porn site, or a prostitute, or something like that, where like you've given women so much power over you that you're going to pay them to temporarily relieve you of your miserable state, and then ultimately just deepen that state in yourself. And, it's a sad thing, but a lot of guys end up here. And I get it because you're constantly looking for a greater high. That's one way to look at it. But I think in many ways you're trying to get further and further away from where you're actually at. Because it's like, if you don't give into that and you've got that craving, what do you have to do? You have to confront that sense of lack and longing inside of yourself. You have to confront that part that's disappointed that you're not getting the sexual attention or affirmation that you really want. And that can be painful. That can be painful. And that's what I think a tier 3 simp really is that someone who is deeply dissatisfied with themselves, their romantic status, all kinds of different things, because, sex becomes a proxy for pretty much everything at a certain point. And this is them just running away as hard as they possibly can from actually addressing these deeper issues. Now, there's going to be some people who tell me that, like, no, this is totally valid way to operate. This is a totally, aligned and healthy form of sexuality. Do not demonize sex work. This is good, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, fine, you want to do that? Go ahead. I still think it's fucking dumb. I think it's really embarrassing. And I feel really bad. I feel really bad for people who do it. I think that they have a problem. And if you want to say it's not a problem, go at it. That's your call. You can try and live your life like that. I'm overwhelmingly confident you will not find peace and satisfaction down that route. And so that's why I would invite you to develop some sexual self-mastery. Embrace your dignity. Stop putting pussy on a pedestal. All right? Take control of your life. Take control of your energy. And this is not an easy thing. Okay, it's really not. But like, if you don't take care of it, there's a significant level of there's a significant enough number of people who like actually leave the stratosphere of Planet Simp and they start, really kind of, spending some significant time on Planet Creep, right? Because it's like, after you get past tier 3 hard simping, then you just become a creep. You start giving your sexual attention to women that don't want it, right? So it's like sexual harassment, or worse, or just being like, a creep to women who are not trying to advertise themselves to you while walking down the street. Or maybe you're watching some very illicit stuff online that you should not be watching. And so you want to stay away from that sort of thing. But more than anything, it's like, take control of your energy, right? Like this whole idea of chastity. I hate that word because it's built like chastity and purity. It's got like these Christian connotations around it that are just I think the sentiments are good, but the way they've been communicated historically is just so frustratingly lame that it just doesn't communicate what it's about. Like the way that I see it is like, it's about power. It's about, do you let your power leak out in authentic ways, right? Like the idea of chastity is really about like, do you have a fortress up around your energy so that like only the things that you want to give your energy to get it? Or are you like this big sieve that any woman with like some, cleavage can walk by and just steal your energy and steal your mind? That's what we want to get away from. That's the bad stuff. So you gotta learn how to take control, and you can check out my free stuff, Sexual Self-Mastery series, my reboot regimen if you want to quit porn. And then if you want like the masterclass on this kind of stuff, you'll have to check out my Reforged Man course, or, get into my Apex Report stuff that I'm going to be releasing. Basically, you want to make your energy yours. You guys are still talking about dresses in here. Hilarious. All right. Final topic I wanted to get into today was I wanted to talk a little bit about politics. So, as many of you know, the election has not still been officially decided between Trump and Biden. All right. The left is kind of just fully confident they won. But if you look at some right-wing news sources, there is a lot of, what do we want to call it? I don't know. What's the official like level that something needs to reach for it to be like proven evidence? There's hundreds of sworn affidavits about, voter corruption. There's all these allegations about voter fraud and, corrupt software and all this kind of stuff. Trump screaming he's winning, that sort of thing. And what I'm seeing, because like I try to watch news from all sides, and it's really like a true like bifurcation of reality at this point. There's two different realities that people live in depending upon what sort of news sources they tune into. And like it's gotten nuts. So like, for example, like this has happened, how do I want to phrase it? So I get the desire to talk about stuff like political stuff with people you agree with. Okay. I do. And I think that's part of the issue here. So part of it's like the media and the way that they blacklist certain, ideas that like the mainstream media will kind of like, they got their narrative. And then if you disagree with their narrative, they just ignore you or demonize you. So now we have a whole other set of alternative news sources that are like doing their own thing. So that's part of what causes the split. But also, I think it's just like a human nature thing. Like you want to hear things from people you agree with. You want to hear things that kind of confirm your preconceived notions. And sometimes you just don't want to fight about basic shit, like basic facts or basic worldviews. Like, for example, in my friend group, we have our core friend group discussion thread, like in Discord, but then we've got two separate ones. There's like one for the more right-leaning folk, and then there's one for the more left-leaning folk. And I won't tell you exactly what my political beliefs are because they're kind of nuanced, but I will tell you that I did not get invited to the left-leaning group. And I think a big reason for that is that like when we would talk in the main group channel, it would just be like a fight, it'd just be a fight that didn't get anywhere. And I've kind of talked about this a little bit in my previous episodes. But what's crazy though is like I asked the left-leaning group like what's their perception that there was the chance that there was any sort of meaningful voter fraud. And they were like 10 out of 10 confident that there was absolutely none. Meanwhile, in the more right-leaning group, people are pretty confident that some fishy stuff happened and that it might be, it might affect the outcome. That at the very least it's worth looking into. And so it's like two different realities, right? And part of it's because we're lazy, part of it's because we just don't want to fight all the time, and part of it's like exacerbated by the media. But the thing I want to get into is like, what do you do about this? At least in your own life. I talked previously about how you can talk to other people in a political manner. But the big thing that you want to avoid, I think, is just becoming one of those people who is way too confident in their own opinion. And this usually happens because you only watch news that confirms what you think, right? You get really confident in your political stance, but undeservedly so, because you haven't done any research, you haven't looked into any alternative views or anything like that. And this one can make you look stupid too. It could really burn you, because like, what if the side that you're looking at is not telling you something really important that could ultimately affect your life, right? Like, we are entering into crazy times. Who knows what's going to happen with lockdowns? Who knows where this world is heading? And if you get blindsided by stuff, who knows what could happen? Like, say, for example, you're super hardcore into a side that believes that there's no way there's going to be another lockdown. I'm not saying that this side exists right now, but let's say that's the case. And then a huge lockdown hits and you haven't prepared or anything for it. Well, then, you're going to be, at the store trying to buy toilet paper and there's no toilet paper left. So that's just an example of a scenario where you don't want to be in a news silo. So my general advice here is listen to some mainstream sources on the right, listen to some mainstream sources on the left, and then we got to get into the conspiracy side of things. I think you need to kind of get some more what the mainstream would call fringe views, but like, why trust just the mainstream narrative? Like, listen to some Alex Jones, all right? That would be kind of the more right-leaning side of it. Listen to some QAnon. Just hear what they have to say. Just see, all right? And then make sure you do it on the left-leaning side. I'm like, who would that be? Probably like, CNN's almost like that, but they're more mainstream. I guess like the Jezebel magazines, the like looking into like the Young Turks, the people who are just super lefty extremist progressives, like tune into whoever likes Antifa, follow them, see what they have to say. All right. Like, this is something that I still haven't found yet. I'm trying to figure out exactly who the right person is to look at for that kind of stuff. But you want to get all sides, right? You really do. You want to, especially when one of those sides proves to be correct, right? So like extremist left, they were the ones who said that the mainstream Democrats were going to screw over Bernie Sanders. And, they did, and they did twice. So it's like, if you only watched like CNN, they probably wouldn't say that exactly. And if you cared about Bernie Sanders, that's something maybe you'd want to know, right? Alex Jones has been proved right on many things. He's been wrong on some stuff for sure too, but he also reports on stuff that no one else reports on. So it's like, don't live in a bubble because you're afraid of people judging you for what you watch. You owe it to yourself to be educated on all sides. And what you do is you look and see what parts agree. If all sides agree about one thing happened, there's a very probable chance that it happened, right? If all sides agree that this one thing is the way it is, pretty good chance that it is the way it is, all right? If one side's screaming about something and the other side just completely ignores it, that's usually a bad sign for the side that's ignoring it, right? They're just trying to downplay it. If they're and the most important thing is, like, if both sides disagree, they have a completely different perception of the same event. Okay, we'll hear what both sides say and see which one is accurate, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff even just around the initial reports of voter fraud that seemed reasonable from both perspectives. It's like, okay, they're boarding up where they're counting the votes and not letting anyone see. And then I see, they're boarded it up because they didn't want anyone to see how people voted. And just all kinds of stuff like that. And then it becomes a matter of how much do you really want to dig into the details? And I don't have the time to do all that. So it's like, by just keeping myself aware of both sides of the story, the number one thing that I'm doing is I'm giving myself a gauge of how much I really know what's going on. Because, like, if I see two different takes on the same instance and they're completely different, then at the very least I have to say, I don't know. And that protects me from being an asshole. That protects me from acting more certain of myself than I actually am. And I think it's this unearned certainty that causes a huge amount of the problems, because you see some person who watches one thing just spout it off like it's the number one most true thing in the world, when maybe it's not, and very easily provably not. And then another person freaks out at them and says they're an idiot. And then before you know it, people are just being stupid to each other, and we just get more noise and more toxicity. So like, that's how you protect yourself, is you just educate yourself. And if you're not going to do the work of educating yourself, that's fine. Just admit you don't know, right? Now, obviously, if you do the work and you are pretty certain on where you stand, then stand up for that, share that with people. But I think, we're reaching a crazy time in this world, and especially if if Biden does not win as smoothly as the mainstream seems to think, then things are going to really hit the fan. But maybe that'll be a wake-up call for people. So anyway, let's take a look here at chat, because we pretty much got through everything that I wanted to get through. Mark Hardy says, take the middle path. Do not comply with anyone who imposes their worldviews upon you. Yeah, I don't know. Like, when by the middle path, I think I know what you mean. I wouldn't say necessarily mean centrism is the best. Like, you can be very authentically left-leaning or right-leaning, but like, you got to do it on your terms. You got to actually, examine the situation. You might philosophically side with one side or the other, but like, when it comes to developing that view, you do want to develop it, from at least looking at both sides for sure. Shreyan says, I just watched The Onion. Best media source. Absolutely. That and Babylon Bee, right? Tails says, I got super deep into the conspiracy theories 10 years ago and got out of it, the whole thing, probably a year later, but a lot of it made me aware of a lot of things. Like, that's the thing with the conspiracy stuff is like, once you get like a bit educated on what's actually happened and like demonstrably proven to be true, it's like anyone who like trusts the mainstream narrative is nuts to me, right? It's just crazy. Like, if you just trust it unquestionably, if you just put on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News and you're just like, oh yeah, I believe you guys, like, you just don't know how much crazy shit has happened. So it's like everyone at least needs a little bit of conspiracy in their life. Otherwise, you're going to end up played, I think. Gabuda says, I just want to know what is normal for once. I've never known it my entire life. Now these crazy asses are out to destroy everything. Yeah, I think actually not knowing right now is the normal thing. And you just do your best, man. You just like try and laugh about it to the best of your ability. Keep yourself taken care of, and don't get too freaked out. And says, pretty much all my friends abandoned me this year for speaking up against BLM. I'm sorry, man. I think there's very many legitimate reasons to speak out against BLM. I will affirm you on that. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's pretty good. Hopefully you guys dug this stream. I'm having fun with these things. I'm going to be posting these up as a regular podcast too. So you can get that by going to universalman.com. We'll be on Spotify. It's on iTunes, all that good stuff. So if you like this, let me know. I'm going to be getting clips and stuff laid out over the next week. I still have a bunch of clips actually from the previous two podcasts. So this is how I'm going to basically be doing content moving forward. Just, put together a live show, put it out there, and then I'll have my guy go ahead and chop it all up, put it in the clips for you later if you can't handle the full show or you can't get around to it, which is totally fine. So That's it, everybody. Hopefully you found this useful. You got something out of it. Keep winning, and I'll see you all in the next one.